All right, so we're actually going to go. Then we'll do an origin thing. So let's go back to your beginnings.
Yes.
When did you know you want to be a designer?
Well, I actually, growing up, I was the artist. I was drawing in my bedroom. I was doing caricatures of everyone I knew. I was the artist in the family and with my friends. But I didn't know that production design and working in television actually existed as a career. But I loved comedy. I used to audio record The Tonight Show and loved comics. And I was an artist, and so I went to art school. During art school, there was a class that was canceled, and I was roaming the hallways, and on the wall there was a flyer that said, interns needed at CBS. And you know how they talk about like the light bulb moment? Yeah. I had the light bulb moment of, wait, I can apply my art and work at a television show, and that show was the Joan Rivers Show. And 3 weeks after getting that job as an intern, making no money, Joan needed some artwork on the scene for a show, an episode, and she said, have the art kid do it. I was the art kid. That was my first credit. That was the first time I got artwork on a TV show, and that started my entire career up until this day. All came from that moment.
So what were you, so when you're back in school, because I always tell my students who to study, who you study from a production design standpoint, like what films or TV shows?
Well, to be honest, I was a fan of like the Batman 66, colorful craziness. I was a fan of Star Wars. I was a fan of all the gadgets and the props and the guns. But again, I would look at those shows and those movies as something somebody else did. I did not know that I could have a job doing that. And now, years later, with Key and Peele and Workaholics and Miracle Workers and all the other shows that I do, I'm making all those crazy, decisions to have props and spaceships and guns and things made just like I did when I was a kid.
Well, touch on Key and Peele a little. It was really a series of short films. The show is just like cinematic short films. I don't know how many we don't.
320 of them.
320. So how is that maybe shaping your career? Because you had to do different genres. Within like the genre, each time's a little different every short film. Does that kind of help maybe round you out as an artist?
I really appreciate you noticing that it was cinematic, because that was a decision that was made by the director and by myself and by the costume designer and by Jordan and Keegan to not let it look like a sketch comedy show, but to make little movies. So we approached every single one as it was a $200 million film. And so you're right, it was a crash course in sci-fi, 1800s, period pieces, current pieces, and all of that is based in making sure your research is good, making sure that you have a mind that goes, it would be really funny if grandma had this on her counter. And then you have a great crew of set decorators and art directors and prop masters and graphic designers who bring all of their education and their experience to the table, and they're helping create a set that is only going to stand for 4 hours, because we would shoot it before lunch. So every favorite Key and Peele sketch, no matter how cinematic and beautiful it looked, only lasted 4 hours, and it was on a truck, and we were shooting the next one because we would shoot 10 a week. So that ability and that experience gives me the opportunity on every job interview that I go on to say, oh, I've done sci-fi, I've done Westerns, I've done, you name it, I've done it on Key and Peele, and fortunately that show is a big hit, and people go, oh, well, if you did that, you know what you're doing.
I remember talking to Jordan about my favorite episode, the racist zombies. But he was like, he just liked it because you could experiment. Like, it was a big experimental, actually he said it was his best education, working on that show as a writer and actor.
And what I'll say about that is that as an art department, what we did was we made sure that everything was rooted in realism. We never tried to compete visually with the performances that Jordan and Keegan were doing. So let them shine and let our racist zombie sets look like The Last of Us. Let it look like The Walking Dead. Let's not try to do funny stuff on the sets. Let's make people at home go, wow, this looks so real. And then in turn, it is so funny of what's happening.
So now we have let's say we have a lot of upcoming students watch our show. How can they get the experience they need? Good.
Well, to me, it's extremely difficult and extremely hard at the same time, and also not hard. And that is, and I know that sounds convoluted, but if you want to work in television and do what I do on Key and Peele and Workaholics or any other types of shows, you already know you want to do that, but you think that there's a big wall that's preventing you from doing it. You think of your three favorite television shows or movies. You go on IMDb and you pick the department of who you want to be. You want to be in the camera department, costumes. Let's say you want to be a writer, producer, editor. You scroll down the credits and pick a few people. You follow them on Instagram. You comment on their things. Maybe then you find their email address. Hi, I'm a student. I don't have any experience. I'm studying and whatever, but I'm interested in being a production designer someday. Here's some of my work. I really admire your work. How can I do what you do? Now, you'd be surprised how many people will write back and mentor and say, you should meet this person, you should meet that person. I then look at their Instagram. I look to see if they have a website or what their work is at school. And if they seem like they have the hustle and the sort of dedication to get it done and to work in television, I'll mentor people. I'll introduce them to people. People keep in touch with me. And then here's what happens. You're in school. I book a job where I don't have a budget. It's like $5,000 on the weekend to shoot a music video. Do you know who I'm going to call? I'm going to call that student of yours who has been reaching out to me, who I know wants to do what I do, and say, would you be interested in being an art director on my music video? Now you're in. Okay, now you've got that credit. Now you're then meeting other people on that set, and then you're doing what I'm doing, and you hustle, 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 and in 5 years, you're booking a show like Key Peele because you've thrown yourself in there, and you're brave, and you're a rock star. And the final thing I'll say is, if you're a student, title yourself who you want to be in 10 years. So if you want to be a cinematographer or a production designer or an editor, on your Instagram bio, you're an editor. You're not going to get hired on a job that you're not qualified for anyway. But the minute you start calling yourself what you want to be, the world responds and says, we're going to offer you some opportunities to be in the art department or be an editor.
And let's be honest, like if you're hiring that student for your video, your low budget, eventually you're going to get a big budget. Yes. And you're going to hire that person.
So I can tell your students, and I can tell you, that my entire career is all of that. It's people that came to me as a PA. I noticed a hustle and a talent. I hired them on a big show. I then got them in the union, and they became maybe a buyer or an assistant art director, and then they became an art director or a set decorator. Then they left me and they became a production designer. And I can tell you dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and I still to this day do that, because that's how this industry works. You start at the bottom, no matter what your ego is, no matter who you think you are, you start at the bottom and you bust your butt to move up and meet people.